The most dangerous manipulation is not loud. It doesn't look like control, and it doesn't feel like force. It feels normal. That's exactly why most people don't realize they're being used until it's too late, until their energy is drained, their confidence is weakened, and their decisions no longer feel like their own. Real manipulation doesn't announce itself. It hides behind everyday interactions, behind charm, concern, and sometimes even affection. The person using you doesn't need to be obvious. In fact, the more invisible their strategy is, the more effective it becomes. Because if you can't see it, you can't resist it. And once you stop resisting, you start cooperating with your own exploitation. The first sign you're being used is this: you feel guilty, but you don't fully understand why. This is not normal guilt, the kind that comes from doing something clearly wrong. This is vague, lingering guilt. The kind that shows up after conversations, after requests, after interactions that leave you feeling slightly off. You start questioning yourself. Maybe I should have done more. Maybe I'm being selfish. Maybe I'm the problem. And that's exactly the point. Guilt is one of the most powerful emotional levers because it turns you into your own enforcer. The manipulator doesn't need to control you directly. They just need to plant the feeling. Once it's there, you begin adjusting your behavior automatically. You say yes when you want to say no. You overextend yourself. You prioritize their needs over your own, not because they force you to, but because you feel like you owe them something. And the most dangerous part is that this guilt is often manufactured. It's created through subtle comments, passive disappointment, or strategic silence. They don't accuse you outright. They imply. They sigh. They withdraw. And your mind fills in the rest. You end up carrying emotional weight that was never yours to begin with. The second sign is this: your boundaries are constantly being tested, but never directly broken. This is where manipulation becomes almost surgical. A skilled manipulator doesn't crash through your limits. They erode them slowly. They ask for small favors first. Things that seem harmless, reasonable, even trivial. And once you agree, they escalate. Not all at once, but gradually. Each request slightly bigger than the last, each expectation slightly higher. If you resist, they don't push aggressively. They adjust. They soften their tone, make it seem like you misunderstood, or frame it as something minor. Over time, your sense of what is acceptable begins to shift. What once felt uncomfortable starts to feel normal. What once felt like too much starts to feel expected. And before you realize it, you are operating far beyond your original boundaries. This is how people end up giving more than they ever intended, more time, more energy, more emotional investment, without ever consciously deciding to. The manipulation works because it avoids triggering your defenses. There's no clear moment where you can say, "This is too much," because the change was gradual. It was incremental. And by the time you notice it, you're already deep inside a dynamic that no longer serves you. The third sign is this: you feel emotionally exhausted after interacting with them, but you can't clearly explain why. This kind of exhaustion is different. It's not the fatigue that comes from physical effort or even healthy emotional connection. It's a draining, heavy feeling that lingers. You leave conversations feeling confused, slightly diminished, or mentally overloaded. You replay what was said, trying to make sense of it. Maybe they shifted blame in a subtle way. Maybe they redirected the conversation so that your concerns disappeared. Maybe they made you feel like you were overreacting without ever saying it directly. This is often the result of psychological tactics designed to destabilize your perception. Not enough to create obvious conflict, but enough to keep you off balance. And when you're off balance, you're easier to influence. You second-guess yourself. You hesitate. you become less certain of your own judgment. And that uncertainty creates space for them to define the narrative. Over time, this drains your clarity, your confidence, and your sense of control. What makes all of this so dangerous is that none of these signs are loud. There's no obvious attack. No clear violation. Just a slow shift in how you feel, how you act, and how you see yourself. And that's why it works. Because you keep trying to rationalize it. You tell yourself they didn't mean it that way. You give them the benefit of the doubt. You adjust, adapt, accommodate. But manipulation doesn't need your awareness to function. It only needs your participation. And if you're not paying attention, you'll give that participation freely. The solution is not paranoia. It's awareness. You don't need to assume everyone is manipulating you. But you do need to start paying attention to patterns. How do you feel after interacting with someone? Do you feel clear, respected, and grounded, or confused, guilty, and drained? Are your boundaries being honored, or are they slowly being moved? Are your decisions coming from your own values, or from pressure you can't quite explain? These questions matter because they bring the dynamic back into your awareness. And awareness is where your control begins. Because the moment you can clearly see what's happening, the dynamic changes. You stop reacting automatically. You stop adjusting yourself to fit someone else's hidden agenda. You begin to pause, to question, to choose. And that choice is the one thing manipulation depends on you not using. Once you start using it again, the entire structure begins to collapse.